part of the demo where what we're going to do is we're going to do a little bit of, and I'm going to backtrack here actually. We're going to do a little bit of key lighting and get this green screen out. And then what we're going to do is we're going to create some 3D space here. So first thing, I'm going to go click in my video. I'm going to go to Effect, and I'm going to go down to Keying and Key Light 1.2. I want to go over to my Key Light color eyedropper for screen color, click on my background, and I'm going to go over here and change final result to screen matte. Now, down at the bottom, I'm going to go to screen matte, and I'm going to go to clip black and bump that up just so I can not see some of the stuff that's in this background. Switch back to final result. All right, it looks pretty good. All right, now what I'm going to do is create a new solid background. And I'm just going to set it to this color, hit OK, and move it down to the bottom. From here, I'm going to go and I'm going to look up vignette in my effects and presets. I'm looking for CC vignette. I'm going to drop that down onto my solid color background and just go ahead and tweak that a little bit, make that look a little bit darker on the edges. We're going to end up changing that a little bit later anyway. So now we have just our video kind of keyframe where we have motion and a background. From here, now we're going to start getting a little bit 3D. So first thing I'm going to do is right click, new camera. And the kind of camera we want, 50mm, enable depth of field. So you're going to change that preset to 50mm, check enable depth of field, hit OK. We're also going to right click, new, null object. And we're going to call this null object. This is like going to be our camera control, so we're going to call camera controller. So our camera, we can control it, but we tend to not use that just because it's a little bit easier to link this to a null object. So what I'm going to do now is attach my camera to camera controller. I'm also going to make sure that this button down here in the bottom left is checked, and I'm going to turn on all my 3D cubes for every single layer so that we can work in 3D space with everything. So backing out here, it looks like for some reason my body disappeared, but we'll fix it. Next thing, I want to create some 3D space here. So I'm going to change my one view here to two views. All my images are right here now. So I think what happened was I already set this. We're all in 3D space. So I'm going to go to the background, my orange, down the bottom, hit P. And I'm going to mess with Z, which is the third slider there. And what I'm doing here is this view over here is space above. I'm seeing my video from above. So if I slide that background all the way back, there I am. Okay, I'm going to push that back further. I'm also going to change the scale of my background, the color, just because I'm going to end up moving around a little bit. All right. Next thing, I'm actually in a good spot there. So, but if I hit P on my my own video clip, I'm going to just move myself. So I'm in between. If you kind of look at this left side here, I'm in between the back wall and then whatever this is. Looks like that's the text. So I'm going to click on the text and I'm going to hit P and hit P again. And that's going to move my text. So I'm going to move that actually pretty close. All right. So now we're kind of set up in 3D space. So again, this is our actual camera view. This is our top view of what's going on. Next thing I'm going to do is go into my camera. And I'm going to drop that open. Drop that down. Go into camera options. Okay. We already enabled depth of field. That's going to give us some blurs when focus distances change. So I'm going to go to aperture and change this from 25 somewhere between 700 and 800. I'm going to go to 800. You can mess around with those numbers. That may blur some stuff right away. That's okay. Don't worry about that. So what's going on here is this is actually my camera. So if I'm just going to move it for the time being. And you can see, whoops, grab my hand and just back up a little bit. This line right here is actually what's the focus point. So whatever that's touching, and it looks like there, it's touching somewhere in between the image of myself and the test. But if I move this forward, now I'm in focus. If it's touching that line, because that's my image. If I back it up and I touch this other red line, now the test is in focus, and now the background would be in focus. Okay, and I can set that anywhere I want. So I could actually keyframe this, and I believe what I'm doing there, if we kind of get into camera options, I'm changing point of interest and position. You could keyframe those. That would be okay if you choose to. I prefer not to keyframe that. I'm actually going to go into camera controller, and I'm going to go into transform for that and just turn on position. That's why I'm just using X, Y, Z. So I'm going to turn on my keyframing for that. Now, at the beginning, I'm going to say, okay, where do I want it to start? I'm going to change my Z. All right, maybe I want it to start with the background in focus. And then fairly quickly, I want it to pop back so that my text is in focus. And then it's going to go back, and now I'm going to be in focus. So you can see whatever that pink line ends up touching at the kind of top of this triangle here is what's going to be in focus. So now let's see what that looks like. If I hit spacebar, it's going to render a little bit slowly at first, but we'll be able to kind of see it. So my camera is moving in and out, and I can also move it side to side too. So if I actually wanted to have this thing, you know, go through stuff or closer and further away, I could do that. I'm going to stop it there. Right, and maybe I'll do a little bit of keyframing with Y or X. So let's do X. So at the beginning here, I'm going to have myself be there. And that's why I kind of made that background a little bit closer too. Actually looks pretty good. So there I kind of just slide in. Boom. And now I want to be further over here. Let's see what that looks like. Again, it's going to take a little bit of time here to render out. And my camera's just moving through space. All right. So I would let that render and check that out. It might take a couple minutes, you know, even for about 10 seconds of footage just to render that out and see what it's looking like. You could also go into your actual camera and go into camera options. And you could change focus distance too. So by that, what would happen is, all right, say at this point I turn on my focus distance keyframes. At that point, I don't know exactly what's in focus. My camera's still moving, but I could have this change. So between then and then, I could have it refocus on something else. So maybe that pulls back. And my focus distance, which is right here, that slider, I'm just changing that focus point. So the camera's not moving, but what it's actually, you know, seeing in focus is. So there I would go. All right, I'm going to pop back so that I'm the focal point. All right. Last thing, we're going to do some drop shadows here. So I'm going to look up drop shadows. And I'm going to go ahead and look up drop shadow. Whoops. And go ahead and drop that onto my image. And I'm going to go in here and just kind of play around with distance. And you can see it right there, kind of going onto that background. I can play around with opacity a little bit and position of myself. There's my distance. And I might soften that up a little bit. And I could do this same thing to my text. So I'm going to grab that on there and go up here and just mess with some of those settings as well. So there's my distance, push it back. And so this will create that illusion of just a little bit more three-dimensional effect. And so once you kind of render that out, you know, again, you can put some blurs on there to soften those shadows a little bit. Once you render this out, it's good to go.